Okay, so
we know that many species will be harmed at these levels, such as caddisfly, trout, salmon. So anyone who's interested in sport fishing should be concerned that this stuff is washing into the environment. We have one very famous study from British Columbia showing that salmon would stop migrating up water if the fluoride levels exceeded 0.25.
Okay, now there's been widely reported in the news that sometimes the salmon don't come back. Could that be a reason that there's fluoride in the rivers that they're migrating back to?
Yeah, well, the Damper and Day study, they had a two-shoot study where they had fluoride coming down one chute at 0.5 and the other one where there was nothing coming down, and they wanted to see which chute the fish would swim up. But they found to their surprise that the fish wouldn't even enter the mixing area where the water was flowing down the two chutes, where it was 0.25. The salmon stopped there and would not migrate anywhere where there was fluoride.
Okay, now, does fluoride decompose?
No.
So once it's in the system?
The Environmental Protection Act is very clear. They define it as a toxic substance, and a toxic substance is defined as follows. It's toxic, it's bioaccumulative, which means it builds up in our bones and bodies over our lifetime, but it's also persistent, and that means that you cannot break it down. It may change form, it may combine with other compounds, but it does not, it doesn't go away.
Okay, and do we know what the effects of overexposure to fluoride is?
Oh yeah, we know we have 23 countries in the world with endemic fluorosis disease. The fact that fluoride is toxic is irrefutable, and the public health officials will have stated repeatedly that they are aware, at least, that they know that this fluoride is very toxic and does cause health harm. Where we disagree with the public health is on the issue of when does this happen. Now, the public health does not seem to acknowledge that there are, first of all, that there are various susceptibilities within the population. For example, 1 to 5% of the population are extremely sensitive to this product. These individuals not only cannot drink the water because it causes digestive upset, nausea, and vomiting within half an hour of drinking it, but it will also cause, for some individuals, skin lesions. Now, there's some research being done out in the University of Calgary right now which is showing that this very small fluorine ion can penetrate the skin and may affect your health dermally as well. So this product is a problem for the hypersensitive. It's also a problem for those people who drink a lot of water. What the public health does not acknowledge is that you cannot control how much fluoride you ingest in a day because you cannot control how much anyone drinks. For example, a soldier, an athlete, an outdoor worker, these people can drink somewhere between 8 to 12 liters of drinking water a day. If they're drinking more water, they're ingesting more fluoride. And at those levels, they're ingesting much too much fluoride. Young children, they ingest 3 to 4 times more fluoride per body weight than an adult does. The other problem for children is that when they're very young, their body filters, their kidneys and their liver are not fully developed. So we know from the research that they only can excrete about 15% of the toxin, whereas a healthy adult can excrete or get rid of about 50%. So we have a lot of susceptible members of the population, and that includes the elderly who have diabetes or kidney disease. They are going to be accumulating much more fluoride in their bodies than a healthy adult would.
Well,
I'd like to read a quote. There's an Ontario Ministry of Health 1999 review, and their conclusions are as follows. The magnitude of effect is not large in absolute terms, is often not statistically significant, and may not be of clinical significance. Now, that same author, 2 years later, wrote in a paper called The Science and Ethics of Water Fluoridation, and I quote again, "In the absence of comprehensive, high-quality evidence with respect to the benefits and risks of water fluoridation, the moral status of advocacy for this practice is at best indeterminate and could perhaps be considered immoral."
Wow.
That's Ontario Ministry of Health.
Okay, now I happen to have something here that was presented to District Council by the what's the name?
Medical Officer of Health.
Yeah. Now he presented after you.
Yes, that's right.
And he is obviously advocating for fluoride in the water.
Yes, sir.
So why would a medical officer of health advocate for fluoride when what you've just told me is, according to the science, is exactly opposite of what you're telling me?
Well, it's fairly simple, actually. This organization, when it was formed, accepted the policy of artificial water fluoridation without any science. And over the years, they have never done a review of the science, so they have an official policy position supporting it, not based on the scientific evidence. And they require that their medical officers of health promote and support this policy. You must ask your medical officer of health, what would happen to him tomorrow if he came out and publicly stated that he was opposed to this official policy position?
Well, obviously he'd probably get fired, right?
I suspect that he would have trouble keeping his job.
Yeah.
So that raises...
That's a personal dilemma for him.
Carole, and Jeff, excuse me, that raises the point, who's making our policy decisions for us? And why are they not subject to change as the awareness of science changes?
That's exactly right. Well, isn't it up to our elected councillors and government to decide whether or not fluoride goes into water or not? And if they're being told that the effective policy, by the medical officer of health is that we should support fluoride, how do we get it out? I mean, when because there's two camps. There's the medical officer of health that carries a lot of weight, saying it's okay to have this in because people who have poor oral health are going to have trouble concentrating in school. That's what it says here right on his presentation. So he's indicating that if we don't have good oral health, that there are going to be repercussions all the way through childhood into adulthood. And you're saying the exact opposite.
What he neglects to say is that good oral health is determined fundamentally by good nutrition and the absence of fermentable carbohydrates that cause cavities in the first place. We have very good research from Dr. Weston Price back in the 20s and 30s and recent research now showing that very primitive societies that didn't have dentists, that didn't have dental hygienists, that did not have toothbrush or floss, and they had almost perfect health. They did not have cavities, they did not have tooth loss, but they had good nutrition, and they didn't eat sugar.
Right. And that says something about them as a society, because once you've got all of this, I'll say, processed food and additives and all the things that we ingest without our knowledge generally, built into the foods and certainly the mechanization of our society and the industrialization of that, a lot of things are being put in to our bodies that we absolutely have no control or knowledge of. And in that particular case, that's the exact opposite. They would obviously lead a lot more, I would say, a simple lifestyle, a lot more pure, and they don't get the same kind of problems that we do in a more industrialized society. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we've got 3 studies from Europe and Japan that looked at the rate of cavities and other diseases like diabetes during the wartime years when sugars and processed carbohydrates were not available. And they saw a dramatic drop in both cavities, diabetes, and other diseases of the body. And then when the war was over and sugar became available again and processed foods became available again, there was again the rise of cavities, the rise of diabetes. And what we know is that fluorides do not deal with these necessary causes of dental cavities, the poor diet and the exposure to fermentable carbohydrates. But fluoride consumption will lead to more people with more health problems.
Again, I find that completely shocking. Now, Jim, what made you want to go to district council and sell your case? I mean, why you of all people? Because you don't know anything. Well, I'm not going to say that. Your expertise is not in oral medicine.
No question of that.
Okay,
I've never made that observation or that challenge or whatever the word is. I'm concerned about my own health. I started reading of the health consequences, which are documentable, and they're not in dispute except by our public health agencies. I looked at the cost of getting a filter in my house, as I mentioned earlier, and I also looked at the effects of my kids, because they're younger than I am. I grew up with, as far as I know, without fluoridated water. I was on a well system. What the other contaminants were in there, I don't know. But nevertheless, we certainly didn't have hydrofluorosilicic acid as a source of our fluoride, if there was fluoride in that water. I've replaced 8 teeth in the last 3 or 4 years at a cost of $6,000 or $7,000. I'd like that process to stop. If I've been drinking fluoridated water for 16 years, shouldn't I have pretty good teeth? I don't know. I think my diet's pretty good, and my diet's a lot better now than it was previous to me starting all my investigations. And also, I don't like when I find a wrong, I like to try to right it. And I think this is a very wrong public health policy, and it's been there for years.
Okay. And so what's the feeling at the district level? What kind of reception were you given once you made your presentation?
Nobody asked a question afterwards. One of my counselors who I'm in touch with said that it was well received. Some of the people in the room mentioned to her that Dr. Bjork brought up some very good points. And mostly at that one, I didn't mention any health issues. I mentioned strictly the ethical issues of providing medication, if that's what this is called, to a population that perhaps doesn't want it. The freedom of choice and the lack of follow-up for health effects as a result of medicating a population.
Now, as you made this presentation, you were followed up by the medical officer of health.
Yes.
Who spun a very different story.
Yes, sir.
And was he asked questions at all? Or was
there was one question for him.
Okay.
Afterwards, yes. And he had a dentist with him also.
All right.
I think who's hired by the Simcoe Public Health Office.
So we have a dentist also included in this who spoke positively for fluoride?
Oh, certainly.